Wilkinson, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Police and Crime Panel annual meeting. I think the first thing that we should do is some introductions. I'll just mention the microphones, which mine's just switched off already. The microphones work if you speak directly into them. You need to press them to turn them on. They should stay on for a little length of time. You don't need to worry about switching them off again. But after about 10 minutes, each time you speak, just make sure that the red light is showing. Okay, so if we start with some introductions, as I say, I'm Samantha Wilkinson, the Police and Crime Panel Officer.
I'm Councillor Taylor.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Nicole Sharp from Leeds.
I'm Chris Hayden from Bradford.
I'm Councillor Brenda Monteith from Calderdale.
I'm Councillor Shazad Fazal from Calderdale.
I'm Jack Ferguson from Wakefield Council.
Good morning everybody, I'm Jess Sykes, I'm an independent member on the panel.
Fiona Bernardo, Partnership Support Officer and support for the panel.
Morning, I'm Chief Superintendent Rush Hughes from West Yorkshire Police.
Good morning everybody, I look forward to working with you all. John Roberts, Chief Constable, West Yorkshire Police.
Good morning everybody, great to see you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you and working with you for the next 4 years. Tracy Brady, the Mayor of West Yorkshire.
I'm Alison Lowe, I'm the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime nominee.
I'm Wendy Stevens, I'm the Research and Performance Manager in Policing and Crime.
Andrew Carter, Leeds City Council.
Councillor Anthony Smith, Kirk Police Council.
Morning, Trevor Lake, Independent Member.
Good morning, Councillor Nusrat Mohammed, Bradford.
Morning, Councillor Lynn Masterman from Wakefield Council.
Good morning, I'm Celia Hickson from Bradford Council.
Good morning, my name is Jo Freeman. I'm one of the HR business partners from Wakefield Council.
Good morning, Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, legal advisor to the panel. Good morning, as it is the annual meeting, the first item on the agenda is the election of a chair for the year ahead. If I may take nominations for chair, please.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Eileen Taylor.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Thank you. If we may vote by a show of hands, please. Votes for Councillor Eileen Taylor. Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. Confirmed by voting that the chair for the year ahead will be Councillor Eileen Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me back, and I'm really glad to be back with the members. Before I go, can I congratulate Tracy and your return as well. So you're on the team, and thank you for all that you've done in the past 4 years and what you'll continue doing.
3 years.
Oh, 3 years?
Yes, sadly only 3.
Yes, so well done. First, we need a deputy chair. So, have we other nominees for deputy chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Lynn Masterman, please.
Are there any others? We second it? Okay, so all those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Congratulations, Councillor. Thank you. We'll now move straight on to the agenda. Item 2, Police and Crime Membership Report, which is attached to the agenda. And but before we go into panel, I'm sure our members are familiar with this report that comes round, reminding the member to abide by the pre-election meeting guidance. Take it, all members have read this and understand what it is and be careful of the question of asked during this pre-election. Thank you. So item 3, apologies of absent. No apologies. Item 4 is where we approve the minutes of the last meeting. So is that Item 2, we're here to approve the membership panel meeting.
A different order today. So this report that sets out the panel membership for 2024-25. Panel are asked to note the 10 local authority appointees and to endorse the 2 local authority co-opted member nominees that are set out in the report 4.2. So the local authority co-opted membership has been put forward as Councillor Celia Hickson, the Green Party for Bradford, Councillor Brenda Monteith, Conservative Party for Calderdale. So that's for panel to endorse.
So, our member agree with that? So we can Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to item 4 to accept the minutes of the last meeting. Members, not many members who was there, but members who was here, do you take it as a correct? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Item 5 is to note item of chair's degree, which I've got no action on the agenda. Members' declaration of interest. Is there anything members would like to declare while they're here? No? Item 7, panel agreement rules of conduct of business report. All members should have read their report. And are you happy with the outline and the report? Okay. Item 8, complaint received by the police. So could I ask your side to go through?
Thank you, Chair. Just to note the complaints received by the Police and Crime panel during the last year and the update which has been provided by the officers. In the course of the year, the panel received complaints from 17 different complainants, but this oftentimes it's multiple complainants. And in addition to making numerous telephone calls from people who then wish to remain anonymous. All complaints were assessed with advice from the monitoring officer where necessary. There was 1 recorded complaint and 17 complaints not recorded.
Okay.
Do you want me to update on the 1? Yeah. So the 1 recorded at the time of the papers going to print, 1 complaint was still ongoing. This has now been resolved with the panel not upholding the complaint made by the complainant about the Deputy Mayor, and that has been notified to both the Deputy Mayor nominee and to the complainant.
Okay, thank you. Item 10. This is the panel budget outcome. This item is it now? Review of complaints.
Misconduct procedures.
Right. So, item 9. Have you all read the report? Okay, so we move on to item 10.
Is it useful, Chair, to know that the reason that the procedures were being considered was to don't want to use the phrase tidy, but to confirm the arrangements which were in place and to ensure that the panel, the processes and policies appropriately reflect the work that the panel needs to do. So
So it's not for any other reason than there is a need to ensure that we reflect on our procedures from time to time, and that work has been undertaken, and therefore the report condenses that and clarifies everything so that we can move forward in a professional way.
It would be good for you to point out that you are the chair of that.
Sorry, yeah. At the moment I am the chair of the complaints sub-panel, and the sub-panel is formed through a number of members from this panel who all work together to look at the issues in the instances that they're raised, but there is a lot of work done by the officers and by the support that's given.
Yeah, and first I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing. You're doing a brilliant job, thank you. And then item 10, the budget.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, we're being asked, aren't we, to agree, sign off the revised wording on that item 9. So we've reviewed it. I think we just want to check that for all members happy with the revised wording.
Our members are happy with the decision wording.
Yes, Chair. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we can move on now. I'm eager to get to 10. Item 10, that's the budget outcome for 23-24. This item has been referred to the next meeting due to circumstances. Okay? Item 11, which is performance monitoring. So I'm sure members have got questions and these for Tracy. So we go to the first question, which is Councillor Smith. Did you want to say?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. Obviously, this is my favourite item on the agenda, so thank you very much. Obviously, for new members, the performance monitoring report is a recurring paper that comes to the panel every quarter with an overview of measures from our police and crime plan and summarising progress. It's incredibly detailed, and I want to thank my colleague Wendy for her commitments to making sure that we are doing our very best to hold the Chief Constable to account by having the data in front of us. So I'm assuming, I take it as read, that you've read the paper. I'm sure there's going to be many questions, Chair, that we will share between us, myself, Alison and Wendy, and then there may be operational questions for the Chief Constable. So thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The first question is the Councillor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor. I know that there's been another quite impactful change in the way that crime is recorded. And I'm just wondering if you could highlight which areas of the report these numbers will be giving a slightly different picture to, as it were. I'm thinking particularly about page 7, 1.3 on domestic, where there's been a significant fall. Is part of that explained by the change in the way that we're recording crime? Are there any other areas of the report that you'd like to direct the panel to where that may have had an impact?
Thank you, and honestly thank you for that question, because changing the sort of goalposts of measurement is quite frustrating sometimes, and certainly I was looking at 1.3, which is what you drew our attention to, and the number of breaks offences 120 higher. I was really keen to understand that, and being reassured that a substantial percentage, nearly 50%, are historic, so they're part of ongoing investigations. But you're absolutely right to help us understand the statistics. What are we measuring against? So I'm going to move to our statistician, to Wendy, to maybe highlight some potential changes in the recording data.
So this is a national way of recording and has been mandated to all police forces, but it does affect West Yorkshire more than others because of our high rate of recording of offences, as we've talked about many times in this panel. What we've found is that they're going back basically to a previous time when just the priority, the top seriousness of the offence is recorded, and then some underneath. When we were explaining it in the office, we used domestic abuse as an example, in that when a domestic abuse takes place, There could be some harassment that takes place to start the offence, and then it builds up into, and there might be some damage to a wall, but then there's an assault that takes place. So now, rather than, as we would have done previously, recording all those as separate crimes, even though they would be investigated together in the one crime, now we're just recording that, the most serious crime, and then all those others sit underneath. So what we're finding is that this change in recording is being seen in the likes of domestic abuse, especially because we have been recording all of those, I hate to call them lower level, but they're less severe crimes, which are underneath, and that made the bulk of the recording, whereas now we're just recording the most severe crimes. So yes, I agree, domestic abuse does affect, as we've seen on our measures, it also affects stalking and harassment, malicious communications. So if there's been texting backwards and forwards, we would have captured that as a crime, but now it's not. It comes under the most severe crime. So as you can, it does affect quite a lot of the recording. What Alison did say at the last panel was that if we'd seen domestic abuse gone down as much as we have here, or other crimes, you'd expect the government to be shouting it from the rooftops, but of course they're not, because they know it's a recording difference. So yes, like Tracy said, moving those goalposts does make it difficult for us to understand then where we stand. So at the performance scrutiny meeting, which we have with the Chief Constable or the Deputy Chief Constable, and this time the Deputy Chief Constable, we have been discussing this and being assured that they are that the numbers of victims is still there, and they're still being investigated in the same way. It's only the recording of the crime that has changed.
Thank you. Is there any example you could give us, Wendy, you did ask specifically, domestic violence, is there anything else where the recording has changed?
Well, there's antisocial behaviour, this is crash.
Oh, antisocial behaviour, that's another one.
Yeah, that changed a couple of years back, this crash data.
Yeah, as we've said, during the life of the plan, there's been a number of these sort of changes. I mean, the first one we noticed was antisocial behaviour, but that was the other way. We were going from incident, so somebody rings in about a youth nuisance in the corner, but then when the police go to investigate it, there was harassment taking place. But the HMIC found in many cases the crime wasn't being recorded, so we did a big look at the crimes for that and recorded the crime. Similarly, as Alison mentioned, they changed the system for road traffic casualties, and all of a sudden we had a change in recording, and so then it is hard to know. So the way we look at it, we try to triangulate all the different areas. So when we're looking at domestic abuse, for example, that's why we didn't put the target as reducing the numbers, because we know that can have perverse outcomes. So what we do is we look at domestic abuse, we look at the numbers, we look at the repeats, we look at how many are investigated going through the system, so you get a holistic picture of that crime, so you can see by looking at all of it together whether we are dealing with it the right way or not, and that's how we look at these things. Similarly with the crash data now, we're trying to pull in all of the different areas so we can see the picture that's taking place, so we're not just knee-jerking because it's gone up or down.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith, if I may, also we're not alone in this. Other areas, other forces of similar size are in the same regime, so it's also helpful to check ourselves against other forces of similar size, because they're going through the same thing as well.
If I may, Chair, the main areas where the changes in these crime recordings will be affected are public order, damage and malicious communications. They're not the categories. They will be crimes associated with domestic abuse, but it shouldn't affect too much the domestic abuse categories. What we'll bring to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor is a professional assessment in the future as to how much it affects things, and then we can maybe think about sharing that with the panel. The simple example is if there's an allegation and a report of a physical assault of domestic abuse. Years ago, we'd go to that, we'd deal with it, we'd record that section 47 assault, A as assaulted B. Over the last 5 or 10 years, we've been required to record that assault, plus the 3 malicious communications assaults, plus a coercive and controlling behaviour, plus 3 harassments, and plus 2 damages. And that's where it kind of was getting a bit complex in terms of crime recording. It's kind of returned back to the primary crime rule, and the primary crime will always be the most harming offence, which would be the assault. Doesn't mean we won't charge and deal with in the future other things, but it's so the area that are mainly affected are damage, malicious communications, and harassment. We've got to be careful and watch it though, because we've got to be watching while we're okay with doing that in West Yorkshire. We've got a fuller holistic picture of things. But it does affect statistics. If you get 8 crimes through one incident and don't detect any of them, that makes a percentages changes. So overall, I think domestic abuse and the care and welfare of domestic abuse victims is definitely going in the right direction. You see that in other places. You absolutely see that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about all the figures coming down because you've changed your recording practices. They are in some areas, and I'll tell you exactly where they are in future, but in the greater scale of crime recording, an assault's always going to be an assault.
Thank you. I think that provides some really valuable context to the panel members, and we look forward to additional briefings on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. My question is related, I guess, to the last question, and is largely about public perception, because in my work as a counsellor, most of the casework that I get is about policing things, antisocial behaviour, drug use, and that's on people's lives. And this report, there's lots of positives in this report. It's really useful, to be able to question the report. But I wonder, so people's perception is that crime is rising, even though these figures are showing us different things for all sorts of reasons, and the answers were useful. So I wonder how will you manage these perceptions, and how will you address these perceptions? What are you doing, I guess, about that?
Thank you. That is quite, that's like a PhD question, because we could be here all day, couldn't we, about people's fear of crime. And that's why I think it was really important when we were developing the police and crime plan that the fear of crime is important, that it's not just about the numbers and what's happened to you. And certainly over the election door knocking, when people I met in communities would say, we never see any police on the streets, but often that is because it's weighed in levels of threat. So if you live in a very stable, calm community with very little crime, you probably won't see many police on the street, but it is a reassurance, isn't it? And that's why when we were looking at the safety of the bus network, the panel will have heard this before, who've been on the panel for the last few years, that having PCSOs on the bus network and in bus stations where people see young people gathering, and they see that high vis and they feel more reassured. It is trying to provide that reassurance, but it's also my role as the mayor, with my responsibilities for infrastructure, for skills and for housing, the broken window syndrome, where communities have no street cleaning, or the housing is dilapidated. People feel less safe, even though that is not actually the truth. So I have a job of work to do, but I think that's why being able to hold the police to account in my role, working with the Deputy Mayor, and to reassure the public where the crime is happening, and when it does happen, people get justice. But it is a really big job, and certainly the TV and social media really doesn't help. because it amplifies incidences that maybe 20 years ago no one would know about, and so they're not afraid of it happening to them and their families. So I think it's something that politicians have to deal with more widely about how we feel safe or ensure communities feel safe. And one of the things that was very interesting from the research that we commissioned for Safer Parks, so to ensure that women and girls one of the first things you think about when designing parks is that women and girls wanted to see other women in parks in order to feel safe, because they want to see themselves, you know, reflected, and safety in numbers. But then women feel unsafe in parks because of lighting and various things, so they don't go, so they don't feel safe. So it's a circular problem. So I have the really unique and privileged position to try and reduce that feeling of being unsafe. So whether that's community events, whether that's art and culture, whether that's investing in buildings, opening up plazas so people can walk safely under trees rather than in narrow corridors. All of those things are part of my mission for West Yorkshire, to make it a safe place to live and work and raise a family, but also to perceive it as a safe place.
Okay, thank you. So I absolutely get that it's, you know, the material, structural things and the public health, I think, approach to policing is really, really important, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm grateful to hear that those are the kinds of things that you're doing and concentrating on, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne.
Morning, everyone. Locally, in my ward, and I think this is across the whole of the UK, you tend to see a lot of drug dealers on prominent shopping areas in my ward and other wards selling drugs. And people have this perception that the police is not doing anything to hinder this. So do you have anything in place to tackle incidents such as these?
Of course, nobody wants to see drug dealing in their communities, but I will pass over to the Chief Constable with operational information.
Yeah, we have a whole host of information in place, both working with the National Crime Agency about importation and exportation. They're getting dragged into the international market rather than in the national in the UK. So just have that thought. We're engaged with the Regional Organised Crime Unit again about regional and organised importation and supply of drugs and firearms across all aspects of Class A, recreational, addictive drugs. That's on regional Yorkshire and Humber region. We have a West Yorkshire Police Serious and Organised Crime Unit whose day job is doing nothing other than interdicting in terms of drug offences. Each district has what's called an Operation Precision Team, which is around taking out the most harmful people. A lot of that is associated with organised crime groups, OCGs, and with urban street gangs, which are people you'll see, USGs, who are then exploiting and using predominantly mainly younger, if you read the Sunday Times last week, and also women in that supply of controlled drugs. So the answer to it is prevention, which is not having people buying drugs. That's a health and local authority issue. The answer to what we all want is more police officers to go lock them up and deal with them. Yeah, so that's a shared responsibility around community safety with local authorities and policing. The true answer to all of that is a political one, not just a local political one, it's a national political one. We'll have the interdiction and the arrests that national governments give me funding for. So I could do so much more. So we're trying to balance. The problem with it that we face all the time, and that's an understandable problem, is communities and people see the visible manifestation of drug supply. What they don't see is the whole host of work going on behind the scenes. We learned a long time ago that we could just sit shell in peace taking those boys off the streets. You need the supply networks behind it. But the sad state of UK and Western society is, no matter how we've had some of the biggest drug seizures, well, we have had the biggest drug seizures and the biggest cash seizures in the country. We've year on year, the volume of that and taking away the network and the money behind people, which I'm talking, it's phenomenal success, but it's still replaced. And we actually speak to a lot of people who have a career, a lifestyle choice but that's how they perceive success in their group and their society and their community. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's a good place to be. We need to do more, but we can only do more of the more people.
If I may just add, before Alison comes in as well, that we've been funding, because we have to stop the need as well, so we've been funding drug testing in custody suites, so that if somebody tests positive, then we can pathway them to a different life, support and rehabilitation, but rather than just putting them back in the washing machine, you know, taking drugs, being arrested, taking drugs, being arrested. But also we have to bring hope back into our communities, which is why it is heartbreaking to have seen so many young people over and this isn't a political point, of the last 14 years, who have had nowhere to go and nothing to do. So they are absolutely prime targets for these criminal gangs who don't care about your kids. They're just running an international machine that's going to benefit them. We have got to ensure, and that's why over the next 4 years you will see change for young people in this community, because we have to give them hope that there is a better way and there are greater options for them rather than a life of criminality or even drug taking because they see no other way out. But it is an issue that is not just our issue, it is across the whole country. But Alison, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain about Clear Home Build, because many of you are new around the table. So we've talked about this before. So Clear Home Build is a national initiative that was actually piloted in a few forces, including West Yorkshire. And West Yorkshire wrote the practice guide, I suppose you call it, around it. And it's about working with local communities and all the assets within that community, the churches, the local authority, community groups, etc., to target criminality, usually linked to drugs and serious organised crime, to not just rid the community of that criminality, but to hold that community and then build it back up through community development type activity, so that we can eradicate that serious and organised criminality for the long term. And so it started with BD3 in Cornwood, and it was centred around burglaries, domestic burglaries linked to serious and organised criminals, and through the work that West Yorkshire Police did with partners in 12 months, they reduced burglaries from 852 to 0 in 1 year. It was cited by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary as good practice in a report that he wrote around burglary, and it's now been rolled out into other areas of West Yorkshire. So we've got a second place in Bradford, we've got Kirklees and Harehills in Leeds. It's incredibly expensive to roll out Clear Home Build, and what we've been able to do through the Mayor Safer Communities Fund is, as well as funding activity in communities that is linked to delivery of the Peace and Crime Plan, we've also now added Clear Home Build as one of the initiatives that we will fund through the Mayor Safer Communities Fund. So we've just closed the latest round yesterday, and hopefully we've got lots and lots of community groups and organisations who will be supporting the Clear Home Build approach alongside West Yorkshire Police, because we need to invest more into Clear Home Build if it's going to have that long-term impact, which it clearly can have.
If I may, Chair, as well, just to say, particularly because you mentioned Homewood, that the Venn diagram of responsibilities of the Mayor's Office has meant that when bus companies said the reason why buses were late is they couldn't recruit drivers, we ran a driver recruitment campaign with a company, but it's not just the numbers, it's where those numbers come from. So we funded a project that went into Homewood, opened up a community centre that had been closed over the last few years with new lighting, we renovated it, repainted it, and the people that came through that programme, and there are now 120 drivers, were from often generationally unemployed families or those furthest to reach. If you empower communities by putting more money in their pockets, then they have a choice. And I think this is the power of devolution, that a problem can come to Alison, myself and the team, and we can think, there's a 360 look at this. It isn't just about getting more police in their cars driving around Homewood. It's about empowering and giving confidence and self-respect to a community that is obviously a target for these criminal gangs, because they see potentially communities that have no hope. So it's a really great opportunity for that sort of that jigsaw to come together.
Thank you. Councillor
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank West Yorkshire Police for being the second fastest force in the country to answer 999 calls. I know there's a lot of work going on to achieve that, so well done. Further down in the report, it does say that there's been a 2% increase in 999 calls. Do you know the reason behind that?
I don't know the reason per se, Wendy, or the Chief.
It's a national, there's been a national increase in 999, and it just appears to be a gradual increase over time associated with access to mobile telephony and people's just frustration and ability. So we then kind of get that national feel to it. But we'll have another look through the stats to see if there's a specific category where there is, and we'll let you know if there's any exceptions on it.
Yeah, but of course we know that there's massive abuse of the 999 system, and from time to time I and West Yorkshire Police do some videos to remind people not to phone the police because your dog's gone missing, or to cast up the tree, or the turkey's frozen and it's Christmas Day, that kind of stuff, which actually it's not a joke, it actually happens.
Yeah. Perhaps some of those would be genuine calls, just frustrated people that make some calls in 999 and things. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just draw your attention to page 10 of the report, item 1.5.2, and then bullet point D. I'd like to congratulate you on the significant increase in the accepted CPS rates. But if I could also draw your attention to bullet point H, which refers to the non-conviction rate due to victim issues. Now, I'm not suggesting there's a correlation or causation between the two things, but I'd like to understand the reasons for that increase in non-conviction and what measures, I know that there is a programme in place, but what additional measures, if any, need to be taken to try and improve outcomes.
Thank you for that. Alison.
Yeah, obviously, as you know, I've been chairing the local criminal justice board for the last 3 years, and so we're all over these figures. This is something we talk about a lot. It's important to recognise the amount of work that the local criminal justice board has been doing, first of all around getting a better relationship with the Crown Prosecution Service, understanding what information they need in order to be able to accept that high percentage of cases first time round. That's massively improved. So I want to pay tribute to ACC Pat Twiggs, who has done an end-to-end review of the rapes and serious sexual offences, to understand what the barriers are to CPS accepting cases in the first instance, but also understanding the journey for victims, which alluded to your second question. So just going back to the CPS, they are now chairing our victims and witnesses subgroup. The relationship is very, very strong here locally. West Yorkshire Police have actually paid for additional staff to be able to do all that disclosure stuff and putting the redacted information into the portal that CPS use, been loads of training and joint working together, so the relationship is incredibly strengthened, and I think that's part of the reason why we're getting better outcomes for the people of West Yorkshire. On the non-conviction due to victim issues, I point out that at magistrates it's lower, but in High Court it's higher. I think that one of the reasons why it's lower at magistrates court is because they tend to be low harm offences, and often victims tell us that they don't want their they don't want the perpetrator. This is domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is 20% of all crimes, so it'll make up a lot of these cases. They don't want their partner to go to prison. They just want the behaviour to stop. And so often the long wait to get into the justice system serves as a disincentive for carrying on when cases are in magistrates' courts. When it's higher harm cases, rapes, serious sexual offending, for example, victims are more likely to stick with the system, particularly as we've got as you know, the Mayor doubled the numbers of independent sexual violence advocates, independent domestic violence advocates, and now stalking advocates. She's commissioned a service, so we've now got more support in place for victims, so that as they go through that process, they're more likely to stay for longer. You might remember that I was on the charging commission, and I was the commissioner for victims because of my own lived experience. I spoke to lots and lots of victims of women's groups about what keeps you in the system, and having that ISVA stalking advocate was the number one thing that kept them in the system. And so that investment from the Mayor has had, I think, a big correlation in delivering some of these better outcomes at High Court. But we can always do better, and the system, as we know, is not delivering justice for the majority of victims, and so there's always more to do, but it's not just policing, it's the whole system.
And if I may, you may share with me the frustration of the subsequent point of over 3,800 cases outstanding. You know, this system is not working for the people, and we need resources in order to get justice for the people that need it.
Yes, thank you. I agree completely. I think we've all heard the phrase before that justice delayed is justice denied, and the backlog in the criminal court system is an absolute scandal. So look, it's good to hear about the good work that continues.
Well, what those 2 points very articulately say to me is that we're trying our best and we're increasing our processes, but we're putting victims and witnesses and people into a system. Once they go into that system, the victim issue is victim attrition, which is a terrible way of describing victims. We've just said I've had enough. I've come to 3 occasions to give evidence. On 3 occasions I've been sent away, and you now move from a trial to 12 months' time. I said that in a non-judgmental way about other people, but on another occasion we'll talk about all sorts of things around charging and how we are and where we are. And just remind yourself, you're sitting in what used to be a court. You know, where's the courts now? Leeds and Bradford, that's it. You know, and so there isn't the system. So sadly, so many things have changed over the years. And I'll tell you all sorts about how I've got myself into all sorts of bother nationally, saying that we should have the right to charge back. So if I tell you just very simply, when we arrest somebody who's domestically abused somebody else, we're not allowed to charge them. Okay? So we've got to put a file in to the CPS. So that immediately sends a message to that victim. You're not interested. And guess who they think is not interested? It's the police. And then we put a file in and we'll get a decision back, hopefully, within a month. And then we'll bring them back in and then we'll charge them and put them into an already busy system. I want to return to a position where police officers charge somebody in their own domestic abuse court 3 days later. And what you'll find is there's far more people plead guilty and accept their behaviour. And then they go into perpetrator programs, and then there's more chance to reduce harm on people. We're doing some other things which you'll see, but it's really difficult because we're as frustrated as others. But I'm saying a non-judgmental and critical way of other agencies because society is getting what it's made for.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks, Chair. Can I just reiterate the point raised by Councillor Sharp about performance on the court handling? I mean, this is an area that some years ago was a real problem. So I think it's not to be understated how great a job you've done in turning that round. The difficulty, of course, is always keeping it up there and improving the performance, but that's not to be underestimated. That's a significant turnaround over a few years ago, so well done for that. My question is on page 6, 1.1.1, and it's the victim satisfaction figures overall. Clearly, the figure from Wakefield, which looks to be a significant improvement focused from them on previous year, has skewed the overall figure. So if you were to take that figure out, if you take Wakefield's figure out, overall you've got a sort of declining situation year on year. And if we look back to 2019, it's a couple of percentage points off that. And the question really is around, you know, what is the strategy about trying to improve this area?
Thank you. If I may say that victim satisfaction is really important to me, because surely that's what our job is, to be the voice of the victim and to ensure that they do get that satisfaction. So it is reassuring to some degree that the satisfaction for victims of domestic abuse is higher than all crime satisfaction, and also stalking, where we put resources, that's also above the all crime rates. But I'll pass over to Alison on the victim satisfaction more generally, because Alison was here, part of the panel maybe during that period that you referenced.
Yeah, so I think it's really concerning that over time satisfaction is going down. We've talked about it many times, and of course we know that national issues also impact on what's happening locally, because happily many people in West Yorkshire have no contact with West Yorkshire Police the vast majority of the time. It's also heartening to see that where the public who have had contact are asked about how they were treated, that tends to be in about the 90%. So their experience of how they're treated is positive. We've spoken to the Chief Constable about this on several occasions. He's spoken here, and I'm sure he'll say again that this links with the lack of communication with victims of crime. So obviously you've got 6,500 police officers and many thousand crimes being committed. It's really hard for the police to be constantly updating victims. We've got the victims code. It doesn't say a time scale, it says in a timely way. We looked at this in some detail when I was on the commission. You've also got staff on leave, staff on rest, staff on... So it's a really difficult issue. What we have piloted here in Wakefield and in Calderdale was we worked with BME communities to try to improve our contact with them to see whether or not that had an impact on satisfaction. And actually what we discovered is that the gap between black and white satisfaction reduced by 5.9%. So it did have an impact, and obviously Wakefield have done a lot of work. We were actually criticised, West Yorkshire Police 2 years ago were criticised for a lot of door-to-door work that they did with the public, getting people to sign up to the community alert system. There was some feeling amongst members of the public and councillors that maybe that was a waste of resources, but actually I think we're starting to see the benefit of that. So there's many more people in Wakefield signed up to the alert system, so there is much more contact and conversation happening with the police and with the communities of Wakefield. So I think it's not an accident that that's happened in Wakefield, but we need to replicate it elsewhere. We need to do more of the work with the BME communities, which was that they absolutely put resources into making those phone calls and keeping people engaged. But we've also got to recognise that there's a very big gap between what's happening here in West Yorkshire, what's happening nationally, and it's the perception of policing. Trust in all institutions, particularly politicians, is at an all-time low. So we've got more to do, and Tracy and I think, have got a role to play in helping the public to understand what values the police play in the lives of people in West Yorkshire. Just on the call handling, I'd like to make the point that one of the reasons why we're improving performance is because when we asked you for the precepts that we asked you for this year, one of the things we negotiated with West Yorkshire Police is that they would reduce the vacancy factor that they currently had for the PCSOs and for police staff, and they agreed to have a 0 vacancy factor in the call handling centre. And I believe that that's had a direct impact on the coming second for 999 calls. So people power.
Yes, thank you to the panel for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is just returning to the earlier discussion about the recording of crime. We talked about ranking it by severity and recording the most severe, but who makes the decision on what's the most severe? And do they work from a framework?
Thank you. I'll ask the Chief about that.
There's a whole crime registrar structure, and it's not the officers, it's put through, and a trained, qualified assessment process happens, and they do work to a national and local framework. They're also inspected as to how they perform against that framework. So under the report called Crime Data Integrity, which is around actually the integrity of crime recording. You're not trying to manipulate figures, you're recording the right time, right crime in the right place. And again, you know what I'm going to say, we're very grateful for the work done in West Yorkshire by the frontline, because we're graded as outstanding for that. The consequence of that is we probably record more crime than other forces, because we're doing it, we're recording it. But yeah, no, it isn't a framework, it's absolutely very objective, and there's no sort of randomness to it, and it's kind of reviewed constantly.
Thank you.
Okay, got no more questions, members. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small points from me. First of all, I'd like to welcome a positive step towards a force that reflects our community with the improvements in diversity. So thank you for that, and long may that journey continue. On page 18, 3.2.1, sharp injury emissions, the numbers are exactly the same. I just wanted to check that that's actually accurate.
Wendy said yes.
Bearing in mind that these are statistics taken in hospital in an accident and emergency, and it's a government way of looking at it, and they are rounded down by the hospital, so they only count if it's 5 or above, and it's in blocks of 5. So you're not going to get the nuances that we get in other crime types, if that makes sense.
Because it's not unusual to see that lack of variation.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, is members happy? Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. We move on now to item 12, public decision. The report, are you happy with the report? Okay. We go on to item 13, the main response to any current issues.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just a number of issues I'd like to draw the panel's attention to. You'll have seen the recent sentencing of Roshane Douglas, sentenced to 28 years imprisonment for the double murder of Joshua Clark and Hadir Shah, and 6 years for wounding with intent of Brandon Coupe in Halifax, October 2023. I'd just really like to commend West Yorkshire Police for this outcome, and hopefully it will bring reassurance to our community. On a brighter note, I attended, and it's such a pleasure to attend, the annual West Yorkshire Policing Awards last Friday. These awards recognise that exceptional work of police officers and staff, volunteers and partners, and really fabulous to see the recognition for teams and individuals who've shown that extraordinary bravery and courage and have contributed to keeping the people of West Yorkshire safe. And as we go to work, if something was to happen, we always run away from it, and our colleagues in the police force will run towards it, and they don't quite know what they're going to find when they do. I was able, as I was giving out an award, to also thank Holly Lynch, Member of Parliament for Halifax, who is now standing down, but she has been such a friend to West Yorkshire Police, championing Protect the Protectors in Parliament. She was an exceptional Member of Parliament, and I'm sure she'll go on to other great things as well. And also, if I may celebrate Police Constable Jess Hall from Calderdale, who, with incredible courage, scaled up to a roof in icy conditions to help down a man with a knife who was being quite violent, and has quite rightly been now nominated for the National Bravery Awards. And we wish her well and hope she does win. And also finally, I've opened applications to become a member of our new custody detention scrutiny panel. The panel is going to look objectively and independently at matters of disproportionality, looking at areas such as, and things that this panel has raised with us, strip searches, use of force, and access to services, to name just a few, for police custody here in West Yorkshire. And what an opportunity to make a positive contribution, because the panel is going to be really core to supporting us, myself and the Deputy Mayor, to hold the Chief Constable to account on good and poor practices that impact on people detained in police custody. And if I may say, also, Chair, finally, the peel inspection report that we were intending to bring here because of the election, as you know, has been delayed. So good things happening, but rest assured the next 4 years are going to be really busy. And you may have seen in my manifesto that we're focusing on serious violence strategy going forward. What more can we do there to keep the people of West Yorkshire safe? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Item 14, action decree. You all agree with this action decree? Item 15, agenda plan. You all agree? Item 16, complaint received by panel.
Thank you, Chair. This is the routine report which comes to every meeting of the panel and notes complaints received by the panel. The West Yorkshire Combined Authority Order 2021 requires the panel to refer recorded complaints to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority Monitoring Officer for consideration. And since the last panel meeting, one complaint which was formally recorded on the 15th of April has been referred to the Wicker Monitoring Officer. There was one ongoing complaint from the previous report, and as I reflected earlier in the meeting, since the paper went out of print, a further meeting was held on the 11th of June, and having considered all the information available, a decision has now been taken by the sub-panel to not uphold the complaint, and the complainant has been notified of this.
Okay, thank you. Item 17, let's take us to any other business. Does members any issue? No? So it just leaves us with item 18, time and date of next meeting, which will be on the 12th of July. Members are happy? Okay. So members are going to stay. We're going to have a break until 11:15, when we go straight onto the meeting. Okay, just grab a coffee, say hello to Rito, and we'll get